Hey there, and welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Jessica, and in this video, I wanted to share with you a couple of functional tests that I personally use that really help to show the effects of chronic stress and the reasons why you might be feeling so tired. So let's dive in. So these tests are really cool, and they are ones that I personally use inside my program, the Better Health Blueprint. What I find fascinating is that they give us a window in or a quantitative way to see usually something that's very qualitative, right? Like I feel tired. That's not really something that we measure, right? But these tests actually give us some insight into why you might be feeling that way. So let's dive into the first one. And it's a test I've mentioned before. Let me share my screen with you, but it's called the Dutch Plus test. So I showed this before in a previous video talking about should you measure cortisol. So click here if you want to dive in a little bit more. But in this test measures a number of things. It measures hormones, so things like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. It gives you a breakdown of those as well. It also measures your cortisol and your cortisol awakening response. Again, cortisol being that hormone that should rise right before you start to wake up and then kind of peak an hour after waking and then decrease throughout the day. Often known and referred to as the stress hormone. So this Dutch Plus test with the cortisol awakening response will show us how your body is metabolizing your cortisol, how much is what we call your active cortisol versus the inactive form of cortisol, and it also shows that pattern throughout the day. So that's very helpful in starting to recognize why you might be tired. So you might be tired because you're not mounting enough of a cortisol response, or you might be tired because say you're not sleeping, but we can actually look and see, well, you're probably not sleeping because your cortisol is too high at night when it should be going down. And we can actually look at it and see instead of just kind of guessing. Aside from cortisol, I mentioned that this test also shows things like your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, so other types of sex hormones. Again, depending on where you are in life, be you male or female, our hormones change. And it's important sometimes to look to see, hey, is it something that's happening from our hormones? So whether you're a man or a woman, sometimes if you don't have enough testosterone, you might be feeling exhausted and fatigued. And that could be due to chronic stress, right? Again, I cannot stress this enough that chronic stress can impact your hormone regulation as well. So this test actually will show us what these values look like. So this is a urine test, and it will use the metabolites in urine. So basically it tells us how your body's actually utilizing these hormones. So the metabolites are kind of what's left over, kind of end product of some of these hormones. So as you can see on this page, it shows all the different types of metabolites from the different types of estrogens and other sex hormones. Another interesting part of this test is that it shows us other metabolites of different types of B vitamins and different types of neurotransmitters as well. This is what we call an organic acids test. So if we are deficient in things like B12 or B6 or even glutathione, these might be reasons again why you are fatigued. So again, this is so cool because it gives you actual values to look at and actual causes. And the reason why this is important is that then this would affect any type of recommendations going forward. So again, that test is the Dutch Plus test, a very cool test. Again, I do talk about it in my video about should you measure cortisol. Now, another test is the metabolic test. I always say that word incorrectly. And this tells us more about several different things here, but when it comes to working up causes for fatigue, it can tell us things about oxidative stress. So are we having problems eliminating reactive oxygen species? Those often damage our tissues and cause premature aging and can also affect our mitochondrial function. So again, we see here, is there some issue with mitochondrial dysfunction? So this test in particular looks at our oxidative stress as well as mitochondrial dysfunction and looks at the different types of byproducts and different substrates that go into our kind of citric acid cycle, our ability to make fatty acids and break them down. So it's looking at how well these pathways are working and where, if any, if there's an issue. which again, it gives us something to make a treatment recommendation around, and also gives us a quantitative thing to actually look at. Now, this test is both a urine and a finger stick test, so it can also look at our omega balances for our omega fatty acids, which is important for many different processes, but for also things like inflammation and pushing more towards a anti-inflammatory pathway. And again, I mentioned toxic exposure or chemicals that can also be a burden on the system, or a type of chemical stress that can make you feel really tired. So this test actually looks at different types of kind of common toxins, so lead, mercury, those sorts of things. And you can say, oh, well, maybe I'm exhausted because I'm dealing with some mercury that I didn't really know about. And then the last category here, it talks about methylation imbalance. Genetic testing is becoming more and more popular, and looking at different genes and basically how well those genes are working, or how well or efficiently those pathways work. That is part of the story as well. It is not the whole story, but it is part of the story. There is a genetic component, and then there is kind of what your body is actually doing as well. So then this test will also show if you need some help in your methylation. Is one of the methylation pathways backed up, so to speak, or not working very well? This can also be another reason why you might be feeling really tired. So the common thing about all of these is that different types of stressors, chemical, physical, and emotional or psychological, can affect all of these pathways. And it's a really great way to kind of take a look overall and see what's happening, and actually then begin to make some treatment recommendations around them. So I hope that you found this video helpful. I really nerd out on this type of stuff, so I would love to answer any questions that you have below. Again, these are tests that I use inside of my program, the Better Health Blueprint. It's all about helping you reduce stress, create a program for yourself about surrounding stress management, giving you guidance and giving you accountability along the way. And of course, looking at these labs and kind of talking about them, and then making recommendations surrounding them, so that you can ultimately have more energy to do the things that you want to do, to live your life, not feel exhausted, and not proceed into burnout. So if you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It helps other people find the channel. Be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can know when I post a new video next week. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.